Hi, fourth graders. Today we're going to have our first online learning reading session, and I'm excited because we are doing a new genre. The genre we're going to start, it's called historical fiction. And I know you guys are familiar with this because when we were learning about the American Revolution, we learned that there can be historical fiction stories about a real time. So we're going to be learning a little bit about World War II. I assigned you guys a Brain Pop video to watch on World War II. So please, if you haven't already, watch that video first. And then you can, if you want, you can pause this if you haven't already. And then you can listen to my read aloud. So I'm going to start with a read aloud, and it's called Rose Blanche. And before I read it, I do want to say that this was a difficult time in history. You'll learn from the Brain Pop video that it is about a war, and it was a really, really tough time. So some of it is kind of heavy, some of it's kind of dark. So just know that going into it, but I know that you guys are mature enough to handle this content. So what readers of historical fiction do is they read analytically, they're thinking, and they study parts that clue them into facts, feelings, or setting. Today we're really going to be focusing on the setting. I want to teach you that historical fiction readers will often start a book and pay attention to the mood of the book. They'll look for details that kind of help them understand what was happening. So we're going to practice that together with Rose Blanche. Okay. So, my name is Rose Blanche. I live in a small town in Germany with narrow streets, old fountains, and tall houses with pigeons on the roofs. One day, the first truck arrived and many men left. They were dressed as soldiers. Winter was beginning. Now the trucks follow each other under the school windows. They are full of soldiers we don't know, but they wink at us. They drive tanks that make sparks on the cobblestones. They are so noisy and smell like diesel oil. They hurt my ears, and I have to hold my nose when they pass by. Sometimes it seems things haven't really changed, but my mother wants me to be careful crossing the street between all the trucks. She says soldiers won't slow down. Lots of times I walk by the river just looking at it. Branches float along, and sometimes old broken toys. I like the color of the river. It looks like the sky. I'm just noticing as a reader, the pictures are kind of dark. I see some barbed wire, and I notice that it's really kind of dark. I feel like maybe some trouble is brewing. We know that there's soldiers coming, and things are kind of starting to change, so we'll hold on to that. The trucks are fun to watch. We stand in the doorway as they pass. We don't know where they're going, but we think they're going someplace on the other side of the river. One day, one of them stopped so that the soldiers could repair the engine. A little boy jumped from the back of the truck and tried to run away, but the mayor was standing there in the middle of the street. And I'm noticing he has his arms out, and I'm noticing still that it's very dark. He grabbed the little boy by the collar and brought him back to the truck. Then he smiled at the soldiers without speaking, and they thanked him. The sky was gray. The soldiers climbed back into the truck. Doors banged shut, and it pulled away. It happened very fast. So now I'm kind of starting to see that the mood's almost starting to feel a little bit scary. I said before, it seems like trouble is definitely brewing. I wanted to know where the little boy went, so I watched the truck until it disappeared around the corner. The street was crowded. Kids were playing. There were bicycles and farmers' tractors all over. It was noisy, just like every day when school is out. But I walked on the sidewalk, ignoring everyone, and no one saw me. Still dark, and I want you guys to take a quick look at the pictures. I walked for a long time, past the edge of town into the open fields where I had never been. The clouds were gray. I'm feeling like that's a bit of a repeated detail. The clouds were gray, everything was frozen. Sometimes I ran. I followed the tracks into the forest and found a clearing. Suddenly, electric barbed wire stopped me. Behind it, there were some children standing still. I didn't know any of them. The youngest said they were hungry. Since I had a piece of bread, I carefully handed it to them through the pointed wires. They all stood in front of long wooden houses. The sun was setting behind the hills. It was windy. I was cold. And this is kind of a tough image to see, but I do want you to just kind of look. Remember, we're paying attention to the setting and kind of the mood, and we can see that there are prisoners inside the camp, which you will learn more as we read our other text and as you continue watching Brain Pop videos. Weeks passed by in the pale winter. Rose Blanche's appetite surprised her mother. She took more to school than she ate at home. All the bread and butter she could carry, even more jam and apples from the cellar. Rose Blanche was getting thinner. In town, only the mayor was staying fat. Everyone watched everyone else. Rose Blanche hid her food in her school bag and sneaked out of school early. So I'm finding that interesting that she's collecting all this food from her mom, but she's staying thin. I'm thinking as a reader, I'm wondering if maybe she's going to bring it to those prisoners she saw at the camp. And then I want you guys to look at this picture. By now, she knew the road by heart. There were more children by the wooden houses, and they were also getting thinner behind the barbed wire fence. Some of them had a star pinned on their shirts. It was bright yellow. When the snow melted and the trees were very muddy, the trucks full of weary soldiers drove only at night, this time in the other direction. They were coming with no lights on from the far side of the river, and they never stopped. One morning, all of the people in the town fled, carrying pots and burlap bags and chairs. There were soldiers among them. Some had torn uniforms. Some were limping. Some were in pain and asking for water. Rose Blanche disappeared that day. She had walked into the forest again. And I want you guys, even before I read this, just to look at the pictures, think about the mood. At this point, the mood almost kind of went from kind of scary to maybe kind of sad. Fog had erased the road. Rose Blanche was hopping around the mud puddles to keep her shoes clean. In the middle of the woods, the clearing had changed. It was empty. Rose Blanche dropped her school bag full of food. She stood still. Shadows were moving between the trees. It was hard to see them. Soldiers saw the enemy everywhere. There was a shot. At that moment in town, some other soldiers arrived. Their trucks and their tanks were also noisy, and they smelled like diesel oil. But their uniforms were a different color, and they spoke a different language. Rose Blanche's mother waited a long time for her little girl. The crocuses finally sprang up from the ground. The river swelled and overflowed its banks. Trees were green and full of birds. Spring sang. And that is the end. So again, I do just want to say, if you're making an inference, I think you guys can kind of use your inferring skills to figure out what happened. Again, this is not a happy time. This is kind of a sad book, but it kind of gets you thinking about the mood and the tone for some of the material that we're going to learn about World War II. So your assignment for today is I would like for you guys to pick, try to go on Epic or Mayan, or maybe you have a historical fiction book at home. I want you guys to read the beginning, read either one or two steps, and I want you to jot down some notes about the mood or the tone based on the setting. Because good readers will read analytically, and they study the parts that clue them in to the facts, the feelings, or the setting. So I want you guys to practice that work today. And after you read I'm going to give you 2 steps actually. If you read your 2 steps, I want you to comment on this assignment. You can either type up a paragraph if you want to take some notes, and you can create a video or record yourself, you may. But really pay attention to the setting and how that affects the tone or the mood of the story. I look forward to reading your responses, and I'm also looking forward to starting our mentor text tomorrow. I'll give you a sneak peek. Tomorrow I'm going to start reading Number the Stars. It is one of my favorites. So tune in for tomorrow's reading lesson. So, okay, I will comment back when you guys leave your responses. Okay, see you soon. Thanks, guys.